Tirop is on the front page of the Daily Nation, and some frightening news on the front page of the Standard. How child killer strolled out of police cells, and what paints a picture of the extent of negligence. Because during the break we were wondering whether he just strolled out or whether he was helped. Probably he was. Who knows? Now his victims have been put on the front page of the Standard. We have Grace Njeri killed at Moy's Bridge. We have Mary Eluse killed at Moy's Bridge. Mutuku Musyoka found dead in Nairobi, and Linda Cherono killed in Moy's Bridge as well. So he is a self-confessed killer and is on the loose. Pretty unfortunate. We were talking about these stories, and of course the feuding between the DCI and the DPP with relation to the case of Top Coin and his murder. Suleiman Bashir, you were telling us about what you feel in terms of this, them being at loggerheads and it making it to the public spheres.
I think for any single criminal case to succeed, it needs the concerted effort of both the DCI and the office of the DPP. And I think when we see some problems within those two groups, it will those problems function to the disadvantage of the procession of those cases. And I think it is so important that these offices work together. I remember when Haji took office and also when Kinoti took office, they had paraded lots of camaraderie, confidence, telling the people of this republic how they work together, how they will ensure that all criminals and maybe corruption suspects shall be convicted of criminal offenses, how they shall sanitize our country of all ills, social ills and criminal conducts. But what we can see over time, what we had seen over time was a problem and a trouble brewing between those two offices. You see, Tricks, any single day when the DCIO investigates a story, that report is forwarded to the DPP for him to action on that specific report. Now, for the DPP to function properly, he needs a good report and a good investigation on the part of the investigative bodies led by the office of the DCIO. That tells you that in the event the DCIO does not do its job, the office of the DPP shall not be able to function properly. On the other part, in the event the DCIO does a good job with respect to maybe preparing a good report, and that if that report is forwarded to the office of the DPP, and the DPP maybe, let's say for example, decides to sleep on those files, nothing will proceed. That tells you both offices are so crucial for the procession of criminal cases in courts of law. Right. For the courts of law to really act on those cases, that is the kind of concerted effort that we need from both. Now, Tricks, the question actually that has been going through the minds of Kenyans yesterday with respect to the petition by those lawyers is, how do you ordinarily remove the office, how do you remove the DPP from its office? We look at Article 168 of our Constitution, we ask ourselves, under what grounds can a DPP be removed? You remove him on the basis of gross misconduct, on the basis of incompetence, on the basis of maybe a breach of the integrity question. The issue. Now, once the DPP, once you point out that he has breached these specific sections that are outlined within Article 180, sub-article 2 of the Constitution, we ask, now we go to the next thing. What is the next thing? The next thing is what we have seen those lawyers doing. That is what Ngunjiri, my colleague, or myself, or yourself can do. If we have certain grounds against the DPP, you draw a petition and you share that petition as they have done with the Public Service Commission. Okay. The Public Service Commission maybe looks at that petition, sees if there are good grounds or cogent issues that were raised, then it forwards. It does a recommendation to the head of state. The moment the head of state receives that report from the from the Public Service Commission, the DPP stands suspended and a tribunal is formed to investigate him. Thereafter, that tribunal shall do a report to the president, and the president is expected to act on that report that shall be forwarded by the tribunal that he shall form. What does this tell us? That these are good offices, but they can still, the holders of those offices can still be held accountable. And those are one of the ways that the people of Kenya are so powerful to subject those office holders to the issue of accountability. But Tricks, sorry to say this, but for me, when I see the kind of people who are parading that petition yesterday, the likes of my learned colleagues, Dunstan Omari and the others, I'm not so confident in what will transpire. I would think different if I had seen that petition from the likes of Senior Counsel Muite, those are the people I would really be so interested about.
Okay.
It is not about prosecuting the petition in the media.
Yes.
It is about drafting a good petition that warrants good action on the part of the Public Service Commission.
Right.
What they have done is they have really prosecuted their petition before the media.
Right. Now, I'd like to get the opinion of Mr. Torstad on this one as well. You're a parent, and during the break we were wondering whether this man just casually strolled out or got help. You said you have been to that police station. What do you think of this story? And of course, as a parent, what do you feel when you know that there's a self-confessed killer out in the streets?
It is very sad to lose a loved one, and particularly a child that you're raising, and you have not seen them grow into an adult. And then you wake up in the morning and hear news that the person who killed that child has actually escaped prison or a detention facility. That means they will not be able to take the punishment that is commensurate with that kind of crime they have committed. But most importantly to discuss is the responsibility. Where does the responsibility for this incident lie? If you look at our detention facilities, I understand that people are detained based on different crimes they have committed, and it is not in order for somebody that has committed murder to be a capital offense, to be detained with other inmates at the same place. And then also you ask yourself, before you can get out of a cell, there are certain doors. There's a number of doors. There's actually the door to the cell itself. There is another grilled door before you enter the cell area. Then there's another grilled door before you now get out of the police reception area. And then now there's the main door, and then there's the gate.
Right.
So if you look at all this and these doors, and then you ask yourself, how did someone just majestically walk through all these doors without being detected?
Yeah.
And this is a person who committed a special crime, not just an ordinary crime. So this is somebody that even those officers know him by face, by name, and they will be able to, they will be alerted at any point this person is seen to be walking freely. And then also, when such a person that has committed a capital offense is detained, are they free, or they are actually handcuffed, or they are actually restrained in a particular manner? Are they in a confined cell where they are alone? So those are the issues to look at. And then also, most importantly, is this person may not leave to pay for their offense. Why? Because when they go outside, members of the public may get hold of such a person, and we
already saw what happened to a relative of Tirops.
Exactly. Yeah. So this person may be killed or may be harmed by members of the public who feel justice has not taken its course, and they have to now act. So that is really something that needs to be interrogated carefully, and heads must roll to ensure that these parents who lost their children and these children who will never wake up again find justice.
Indeed. Mr. Ngunjiri, takes us back to the whole moral issue. What do you think is happening to our country that we are seeing this sort of situation? A serial killer doing whatever he did, then confessing, then he's put behind bars. Before we know it, he's walking out scot-free. What does that say about our country?
The side of the police, this is one of the instances of negligence, because how does someone escape from a police station that has officers guarding at the gate, and probably even which has people who are supposed to be manning the perimeter walls and all that, and even being able to access his way out of the cell is another question. It also goes back to whether there is integrity in the line of duty of these officers, because we ask ourselves, how do they handle certain people who have committed such crimes? This is a person who has attracted a lot of public attention, and someone cannot just argue that this person escaped from the cell incognito. This is someone who has confessed and has been seen by at least so many people, either on media, newspapers, or elsewhere. And so I think that there must be a serious inquiry into this one. And like it has been said here, for justice to be served accordingly. I also want to comment on the DPP and DCI issue.
Go ahead.
I think that this is not the first time that we are seeing this public spat. I think for quite some time now, those two offices seems to be intentionally frustrating one another. I don't know from which side, but it can be seen that there are certain interests somewhere in either of those offices that would want either of them to be painted in bad light or to sabotage the activities of the other. And so for us as the citizens of this country, we have been subjected to a motive by certain, I would say, individuals who do not want the success of the justice system in the country. The president gave a mandate to the individuals that hold these offices with the trust that he was given by the Kenyan people in the ballot. And so any exercise that comes as a result of the day-to-day activities must always be cognizant of the fact that the people of Kenya would want, at the end of the day, proper service from these offices. And so this spat lowers public confidence and also brings a lot of politics into it. And if it is not right now, at the moment, guarded and the integrity of these offices upheld, we might be now going into a crisis where in future those that will occupy those offices will continue with the same kind of culture. So for me, I believe that because it is evident that even as we continue giving these offices time, as the people of Kenya who must be served well by the office holders, it is time now for a higher authority to come into this issue and make sure that they offer a solution. Even the president right now could, or rather is supposed to be offering leadership. And if there is an issue, these two institutions are supposed to now to be called to order by the custodian of the interests of the people of Kenya, in the name of the president.
Yeah. Now, hopefully that is sorted out, or they sort that out. Let's move on to politics this morning. Now, when you look at page 16, the opinion page of the Standard, those with eyes will not see and those without will lead. And they're talking about the 2022 politics and, of course, the upcoming election. And according to this editorial cartoon, Raila Odinga and William Ruto are leading us down a hole or off a cliff. We're told by opinion writer Elias Mokua will only elect the right people if our destiny is clearly defined. Now, one of the politicians that is trying to define destiny has to be Raila Odinga, and he on page 8 is telling of a pledge to tackle poverty to cost 137 billion shillings. That has, of course, has had the tongues of skeptics wagging. And let's take a look at this story before we get into that particular discussion. Now, and ODM leader Raila Odinga has defended his plan of direct transfer of cash to 2 million families, saying it is executable. Raila, who held political rallies in Nairobi, said his plan was a silver bullet to abject poverty and inequalities in the country. Raila added that the ambitious project will be financed by money saved from corruption, as Emmanuel Toll tells us.
For the second day running, ODM leader Raila Odinga pitched tent in the vote-rich capital, Nairobi. Odinga culminating his campaigns by shedding light on how he would implement his plan to issue monies to over 8 million Kenyans living in poverty.
Kila jamii ambaye hawana mapato watapata shilingi 6,000 kila mwezi.
Raila saying the plan was achievable if the corruption loopholes are sealed.
Kenya is losing a third of its budget, the equivalent of about $6 billion US, or Kenya shillings 600 billion to corruption every year. We have also been told the country loses 2 billion shillings every day. I don't need to emphasize what this money can do.
Raila also told off his critics who had termed his idea as unrealistic and unsustainable.
It is not really creating a dependency syndrome. Nobody should lie to Kenyans that taxes would have to rise for this to be realized. This shall be done with resources redirected from a range of ministries that will initially take a 25% cut in their budgets.
Earlier on, Odinga's brigade turned out in numbers as his campaign trail snaked through Bama Market, Juakali, Shauri Moyo, and ended in a rally at the famous Kamukunji grounds.
Mchukue kura. Manake kama mnapenda baba, mumuonyeshe mapenzi na tuko sawa. Na haba ya kwamba baba utakuwa the fifth kama the people's chief justice nimesema. Na sisi kama jeshi ya baba, Nairobi na Kenya mzima, tuko tayari kuhakikisha kwamba watu wameshika kura, baba awe rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya wa 5. Nairobi mupo, nionyeshe sanamu ya baba. Wangapi wataki wilbaro nione kwa mkono?
The ODM leader also called on Kenyans who have not registered as voters to take advantage of the registration period to ensure that their vote counts in the 2022 elections. After concluding his campaigns here in Nairobi, ODM leader Raila Odinga will now be eyeing the Rift Valley region as he is expected to tour Turkana County and Uasin Gishu County on Friday as he continues to drum up support ahead of 2022 general election. Emmanuel Cho, KTN News, Nairobi.
All right, now, never dull day in Kenya when it comes to politics. And of course, we've heard what Baba is promising the youth and those who are dealing with poverty in this country. The question on the mouths of skeptics is this possible? And of course, he has said this proceeds of corruption that will be gotten back shall be redirected into this cushioning, the funds that shall be cushioning people from the ravages of poverty. It sounds very noble, but of course, there are a lot of questions to be asked. And I'll pose this one to you, Mr. Ngunjiri. What this politician is saying, as I said, is noble, but at the same time, the funds that are taken meant for something else and then are stolen, that is basically what corruption is. So when they are recovered, is it only right that they're taken back to their initial purpose?
A sad state of affairs for supporters of ODM, because Raila has a culture of always waiting for somebody else to come up with an idea, and then he tries to duplicate that. This issue of bringing 137 billion that he's talking about to Kenyans, I am confident was birthed as a result of what the Deputy President said as a program that is going to be giving direct cash transfer to SMEs at the grassroots. And so now Baba comes up with his own program that he says he's going to give each of the 2 million households 6,000 each month. I want, first of all, to say this is not sustainable and it is not possible in a country that is struggling to get into the middle economy ladder. You see, for you to be able to guarantee the people of Kenya a meaningful life, you must make sure you give them a sustainable livelihood. How do you do this? Every other tenet of public policy must always be bolstered in either of these items. Either you are able to create jobs for them, that is for them to be able to work and also earn salary. Number two, you are able to create for them an environment that can be able to sustain their businesses, either through giving them, for example, a financial instrument that can be able to give them an opportunity to start businesses, again, by also coming up with a legal regime that also protects them and guarantees them safety as they do their businesses.
Right.
Again, you can only be able to do that by making sure that the people are healthy. That is through ensuring that each and every person in Kenya is able to access universal health coverage. For them to act, they must always be at the best of health. Again, for you to do this, you must also bolster all your activities by, at the end of the day, the money that they earn, they are able to have a saving culture where they do not consume the whole of the income that they get on a daily basis to things like food. They need to save so that they can be able to explore other opportunities that will be able to avail businesses. Again, for you to do that, you must make sure you bolster that with the largest tenant of the economy, which is agriculture.
Right.
By doing what? By ensuring that you are able to make the farm inputs accessible to farmers at a subsidized price. And by that, you are able to also bring, through production, manufacturing, value addition, and agro-processing. All these things are tricks in what us who support the bottom-up economic model are selling. But the things that I'm hearing Raila Odinga talking about are a duplication of an idea, but wrongly applied.
Okay.
So I want to encourage the supporters of ODM to critically think about some of these issues that they are being given and whether they can be sustainable and practical in a society like Kenya. And I also encourage Raila Odinga to always, at all times, come up with ideas that at least for the supporters that believe in his ideology can be able to transform their lives, but not this kind of false hope and empty rhetoric.
Do you agree, Mr. Tarasa, that this is false hope, unsustainable?
I think, Trix, this country has two major problems. Number one, we always question the application of something by who is saying it. So if it is this person that is saying it and we do not really subscribe to his kind of politics, then we should trash it.
But to be fair,
yes,
he's pointed out both scenarios, you know, and the one of empowering SMEs seems more sustainable than these amounts that will just be given out, and the source would be corruption.
I totally agree that supporting SMEs is a fantastic idea, and that one has not lacked in Raila's manifesto. He's actually talked about that. But we can still chew gum and walk upright. You can still support SMEs, but then what about those people that do not have enterprises? What about those people that do not have businesses, but they have a poor livelihood that they cannot even afford a meal a day?
Yes.
So if you have progressive countries have social welfare plans, and if for the very first time since independence we are thinking towards the direction of a social welfare plan, why don't we welcome it? And it's not, we're not even reinventing the wheel. This is something that is happening already. We have Pesa kwa Wazee, you know, there's, they give money to the elderly people. If that one is working, why will it not work if we just expand it? Number two, there has been, sometimes it's good for us to pick things exactly the way they are reported and then break it down to our people. What ODM is calling for, or Raila Odinga is calling for, he's saying that he will give that money to households, not individual people that do not have employment. So how many households do we have that are actually living in abject poverty, that these 6,000 shillings will ensure they have a meal? Even if they are now going to the farm, at least they have a meal. So if social welfare is something that does not make us happy, then what makes us happy as a country? We cannot all be business people so that money can be channeled down to us to do this particular business at the grassroots. But if we can expand the sphere and cater for our people that actually do not have anything to touch on, that's a fantastic idea. And also, we need to also expand what we should be interrogating is the how. How will this be implemented? Not like, is it right or is it wrong? Of course, a social welfare plan is the right thing.
It's noble.
But then, if this thing happens as a president or as a government, you have different ways of being able to raise this money. You can work with international partners. You can work with other governments to support a plan that you have that makes sense to the people. So I think that is where we should be driving the conversation, not just rubbishing it as if it does not make sense at all.
Okay, Suleiman Bashir, proceeds of corruption is one way that he says we can actually get these funds. Now, you're a lawman, and you can help us analyze how often we get to a point when you're dealing with corruption where we have the prosecution and people brought to book, and then the funds being brought back from these people who have stolen said cash. How often does this happen, and therefore that would feed into how possible is it for this to be a source of this or a source of funds that would support this social welfare initiative, as Mr. Torstad puts it?
Tricks, ideally, when someone is charged with an economic crime, and that person is maybe tried in a court of law, found to have found, maybe charged with that and maybe fined, let's say, certain sums of money. At times, the courts order that that person returns back the stolen funds, where the evidence is so clear to the court. Now, what the courts of law ordinarily direct are that those monies be paid back to the government. Once that money is paid back to the government, courts of law do not care how the government ends up using again that money, because the government is the custodian of the public funds. And I think it makes a lot of sense, a common sense. Our anticipation and our expectation is that if today you steal money that was meant for the construction of Road X, that money, ideally, and as a people, we expect that money shall again be channeled to make up that road, to again prepare it, to work on it again, because that was maybe the whole motive. But ultimately, Tricks, this is how I'm looking at it as a person who lives in this country.
Yes.
Our head of state has time and again told us that in a day, we lose about 2 billion Kenya shillings. Sometimes I wonder with Kenyans, what is so bad with the former Prime Minister telling us, look guys, the amount of money that is stolen per day, in the event I recover it, I shall rechannel it in a way that shall help those who are so poor. And I will ensure that that money helps those people who are at the grassroots level, those people who are so poor, at least to attain that sort of equity and equality at some point. This is it, Tricks. There was a 2019 World Bank report that, in fact, outlined that one of the ways of alleviating people of poverty is through the cash transfer programs. The same thing was done by the African Development Bank in 2008. It pointed out that cash transfer programs helps a lot with respect to maybe closing certain gaps that between the rich and the poor. It helps in a way that it supports the poor people, and that is how it ends up bridging the gap. What happens with our country and what happens with Kenyans is we normally consider these words are coming from whom? Are they coming from Raila? Am I anti-Raila? If I'm anti-Raila, I do not care whether these words are reasonable or not. If Ruto comes up with something brilliant, people end up brushing that off. I think, Tricks, what we need to appreciate is the former Prime Minister has brought a very, very noble idea. It's a good idea. It is not just a populist issue, but it's something that is done in world over. The USA gives people to poor households, and that is how it is seeking to uplift the poor persons down there. For us, what we need to consider is, now that the former Premier has brought up this idea, how else can it be made more practical?
Yes.
How else can we change it? It is not about brushing it off. It's a good idea. It's a timely one. And in my view, nothing that we lose billions and billions a day. These monies can be rechanneled and they can help those poor wananchi.
Okay, and now still on politics, Deputy President William Ruto has asked politicians not to misinterpret the hustler narrative in order to incite Kenyans. Ruto says the hustler nation is a movement of industrious Kenyans focused on their economic development and not about classes. He added that it was unfortunate that some leaders are now using the narrative to wage a contest between the rich and the poor. He was addressing a UDA aspirant's focus at the his current residence rather. Let's take a look.
Hustler narrative is not, in fact, the people who want to destroy the hustler narrative are the ones who are telling us William Ruto is not a hustler because he's not a poor man. A hustler is not a poor man. Do you understand? A hustler is a hard-working Kenyan who is ready to work hard and do the right things. You know, wake up early, sleep late, do the right things, and climb the economic ladder. Do you understand? William Ruto seated here came from a very humble background. William Ruto seated here was selling chicken by the railway station one day. Today, he is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. That is the history of a hustler.
All right, Mr. Torres, that's your reaction.
Okay, sometimes I think the DP overstretches this idea of hustler and giving his personal story that we all know it's dotted with some facts that are not really factual. For him to claim that he rose from down there is not really, it's being quite duplicitous, because we know what happened. Straight from university, he gets into YK92, he makes his first million, so he cannot really compare himself to an average Kenyan. But that aside, when we look at, if you're considering political communication and you have an agenda that you want to implement, like let's say the hustler narrative, and then you spend like a whole year trying to explain it, then it means there are some fault lines.
Okay.
If you're supposed to be, every day you speak, you're trying to convince us that it is not what you think, this is what it is. It is not what you think, this is what it is. Because I think it was high time for DP to revise the strategy, because already when he launched this strategy, or rather the people who carried the message to the people, it made it look like there was a distinction between those who have and those who do not have. And if we look at the practicality of it, how many rich people do we have in this country? There are not so many. So if you say, I am living a desperate life because my neighbor has much, then that is not really a reality. But should we find politics of reason where we can rally people on an agenda that we can actually actualize as a country? It's not about an individual getting into office, but it's about something that can be there for posterity. Like 20 years later, we can still remember you and say, this was a strategy that saved country. Today we talk about Singapore, today we talk about Malaysia, and we equate it to their leaders and we say, they did this in the 70s and this is the solution. But our politics has been so much attached to personalities, so much so that at the end of the day, we end up having square holes in round holes, square pegs in round holes. But then can we vacate that position and be able to ask fundamental questions? Like you're telling us bottom up, how are you going to implement this? Rather than just, I want to converge on Bashir's point, rather than just trashing it because it is DP who has said, can we ask him to go further and tell us how exactly is he going to fix this?
Yes, explain to us how. Mr. Ngunjiri, your reaction?
Well, first of all, I think my colleague there did not listen to what I was saying, because if he did, he would have gotten a gist of what we say when we talk about the bottom-up economic model. I also want to say that the Hustler Nation movement is a movement that transcends across tribes, across classes, and across other realms of society. It doesn't necessarily mean that because someone says they are a hustler, then that person is poor. No. The Deputy President is saying, like he quoted in that clip, he's saying that the people of Kenya have a beginning. Everyone has a beginning to what they are today. And if they are able to be consistent in what they do, they can actually be able to create a legacy in a business, a legacy in politics, and in this conversation that we are talking about, a legacy through economic prosperity. This is a dream that all of us must always seek, and which have been our consistent drive each and every day. Because Tricks, you wake up every morning to go and work so that you can earn a living and so that you can have a shelter, education for your children.
Yes.
And also you can be able to have food on the table. Everybody works so that they can make something. Today, in this country, we in the Hustler Nation movement are saying that we are not interested much in political reforms. We've been having so much of that. We are interested in the common agenda that each and every human being has been seeking ever since time immemorial.
Which is?
During the creation of man, the reason why God gave Adam a responsibility and a dominion over all his creation, and he was able to give him all that wealth, was a significant gesture. And going even to the stories of the evolution of man, you can see man inventing fire, conquering other territories, accumulating more wealth. That is what each and every human being seeks as their interest to each and every day. So in this Hustler Nation movement, the main ideology that will be the most utilitarian public policy in the UDA government is the bottom-up economic model. For us to be able to create a sustainable economic growth of what economists normally tell us that we must always redouble our economic pursuits after every 10 years. When we apply the rules of 72 and all those instances, we must make sure that these people at the bottom who we are trying to tell Raila Odinga that we do not want Kenyans who will depend on aid, but Kenyans who will be able to create wealth for themselves and be able to fend for their families by making sure that all our policies, all our laws are either intertwined through job creation, they are intertwined through creating a good environment for social business, ease of doing business, like what is happening in Bangladesh, where we have all that given in social businesses. Again, we also want to anchor this in agriculture. We also want to have a healthy nation for people to work. And again, number 5, we also want to make sure that at the end of the day, people save so that they can be able to guarantee themselves a future. Right. This is what the people of Kenya want at the moment. They are not interested at, for example, each and every day being told about, I don't know which office, I don't know which political issues that are facing this country. Those ones can be settled as secondary issues. At the moment, let us make sure that the people of Kenya have money in their pocket. That is the most important thing.
Okay, Mr. Bashir, I'm looking to you for neutral ground here.
Just a quick one before Bashir comes in.
Okay, briefly.
I think, Ngonjiri, you have to be very honest. If you spend a lot of time explaining something, it means you cannot really understand it yourself. Because if bottom-up is a simple idea that is going to revolutionize this country, we should be able to understand it from the onset. If you spend a whole year trying to explain to us, then there's a problem with that. I have gone to school and I cannot figure out what you have even said now. So what about the guys outside there?
Bashir, come in on this.
Thank you, Trix. Actually, you had put me in a very difficult position once you had said that.
Okay, go ahead. Just tell us what's on your mind.
You expect a neutral ground from my end. And all the same, Trix, for me, in this 2021 and in this 21st century era, I still feel bad that some of our youth are still getting fooled over certain wording, semantics, concepts. that are just sold to them and they buy it. Tricks, for me, if we know that there's something that could transform our country, is Chapter 11 of our Constitution, which is about the devolved system of governance. And I think we may never ever get anything better than that. But what we are having right now is our politicians seem to be coming up with fresh, enticing ideas. For us as the youth, actually, we are supposed to sit back, listen to them, and question how they want to, how they will execute those ideas, how they will make those ideas a reality. But I think, Tricks, the problem we are having is understanding those ideas that they are propagating. The only thing we are picking are the names of the ideas. And I think that is quite unfortunate. For me, when I look at I have heard the speech of the Deputy President, as a youth, I ask myself, now that he's saying he has come from a chicken seller to where he is right now, fantastic. That is something to inspire me as a Kenyan. But I will again ask myself, how has he found himself there? Did he work so hard? Did he find himself there by merit? Is it by meritocracy? If I do the same way by merit, will I equally get to the apex of my career and all that? If we ask ourselves the hard questions, that is how we will end up appreciating the whole aspect or the whole architect of improving our own lives. But Tricks, the other thing that is again evident is our youth are normally brought together. They are told that you are poor, it is because of ABCD, that I will be able to change your life going forward. You see, Tricks, the former Prime Minister had been a Prime Minister at some point. He has had a 5-year term to lead Kenyans as a Prime Minister. The Deputy President, on the same breath, has been a Deputy President for the last 8 or 9 years, roughly. He has actually been a very influential deputy in the first term between 2013 and 2017. I ask myself, on the part of both presidential contenders, what is it that they have figured out today? What is this miracle that they have today? What is this scientific discovery that will change my life today that they never had before? I think it is time we ask ourselves the hard questions. It is not about just buying their political stories. It is about asking ourselves serious questions. Those serious questions shall give us good answers that shall change our lives.
Okay, that is Suleiman Bashir, a lawyer. We also had Alenga Torostat, who's a political commentator, and Kariki Ngunjiri, a political analyst. Thank you